Grant Hunter was due to stand trial at the High Court in Edinburgh, but has now pled guilty to the M of Marc Webley in what was described as a contract killing for a substantial cash payment, a payment that he was upset that he had to wait for. The trial was supposed to be underway, but the guilty plea means that the facts have been now established. Edinburgh organised crime boss Marc Webley, who was 38 years old at the time when he was dead outside the Anchor Inn in Granton, Edinburgh, a few minutes before midnight on what was New Year's Eve 2 years ago. This was 2023. Now, Marc had been hosting a Hogmanay for friends and family and was said to have been on edge after going a bit nuts in the weeks prior. This was because he kept taking out his phone and recording videos and then uploaded them on social media like Instagram and Snapchat, goading rivals into a confrontation. Now, with a bad attitude that had been amplified by drink, Marc was said to have been out of control and was regularly called a madman. Now, on the night that Marc's life was taken, he was caught on CCTV standing outside the Granton Inn. Now, Marc was wearing an armoured vest and he also had a blade hidden on him. Now, he and his mate Stuart Pearson were talking when a red Hyundai Tucson pulled up. At the time, Grant had been wearing a balaclava and had his hood up also, so he was in full-on disguise mode. But this was not good enough for Grant Hunter, because footage showed that Grant Hunter had a gun hidden in his pocket, and as he approached Marc and Stuart in such a personal fashion, Grant had taken off his balaclava and hood because he wanted Marc Webley to know exactly who he was and the reason why this was happening. This was a clear message sent on behalf of his rivals that Marc was going to die. That the two men had talked for roughly 90 seconds, a minute and a half at most. In that span of time, Grant had rummaged through his pockets, unsteady, and then he pulled out his Slovakian gun, gripped the item in both hands and then pressed in Marc and Stuart's direction. Once, twice, three, upwards of 5 times, in an action that was meant to kill. Now, Stuart Pearson was struck first and he slumped to the ground, while Marc Webley gripped on a blade in one hand and he had a phone in the other. Marc was struck in the back as he tried to flee from Grant Hunter. Now, Marc had almost predicted his own death. At 38 years old, Marc had established himself as a hard man and an enforcer and a gangster in the very sense of the word. He was an enforcer first and then worked himself up in the criminal ladder as his very own boss. It was said that Marc had taken exception to the fact that an associate of Mark Richardson had established a relationship with the mother of Marc Webley's children, to the point where that guy was living with Marc's kids. The fact that Marc almost begged for other gangsters to test his resolve, he invited a hit on his head, and Grant Hunter was the person that carried out the order for a cash payment. Now, Grant Hunter is so cheeky in his actions that it was said that when he was at court, he winked and smirked at family members and friends. Now, Grant is not due to be sentenced until December. However, he will be looking at a life sentence. And when he is jailed, he is not going to have an easy time in HMP. Imagine paying someone for a cash payment. You don't get the payment in the end, and also you've literally ruined your life. You're going to spend your natural life in jail, constantly looking over your shoulder and thinking to yourself, is someone going to get me? Let me know your thoughts. Stay safe.